Let's talk more about the political maneuvers in Tshwane now. We're joined by the ANC spokesperson in the region, Bafuze Yabo. A very good evening to you, so grateful for your time. So Randall Williams on his way out, whether that happens overnight or at the end of February, that is a certainty. Is this the gap that you as the ANC have been waiting for to install your mayor?
Well, good evening, Temegile, and your viewers. I wouldn't say this is the gap that we have been waiting for to install an executive mayor as the African National Congress in the city of Tshwane. I would much rather say we feel vindicated that the executive mayor has resigned in this fashion. We have been saying that he's been failing and sleeping on the job. And it is not an opportunity for us to want to fill an executive mayor. That is a discussion that we will have as the leadership of the ANC in the region. It will also be a conversation that we will have with the provincial leadership on what then happens next. But our view is that the DA has failed dismally to govern the city for the last 6.5 years. And like clockwork, every second February, an executive mayor will resign for one or other reason, but mostly and predominantly because of maladministration, corruption, and all of these things that we have been raising throughout as the African National Congress in Greater Tshwane region.
Well, Randall Williams is not saying his departure is an admission of guilt in any of what the ANC and the other parties have accused him of in the last while especially. He says he's leaving also in the main for the stability of the metro so that we don't have a repeat of the recent theatrics in areas such as Johannesburg, for instance. So how are you vindicated if he's not leaving based on the accusations you've brought forward?
He's just playing to the gallery. We know the fact, we know the truth. The fact of the matter is that there is an Auditor General report that says there's 10 billion rands of irregular expenditure. There is over 600 million rands of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. There is no way that Randall is leaving of his own volition. He's leaving because of the circumstances that surround him like a bad omen and a bad cloud that are forcing him out. It's not even about wanting to bring stability. So if he says he wants to bring stability by leaving, what has brought about the instability that causes his departure? It is because he has failed to govern, and he has brought his own party into disrepute, a party that has been saying and claiming all over that it governs clean, it's not corrupt, it governs well, there are no issues of maladministration where it governs. We have been proven right to say that it is incorrect. We have been saying that all along. Maladministration has been the order of the day. Poor governance has been the order of the day. Now they can't even account to the Auditor General. There's multiple misstatements in the current report that has been issued by the Auditor General of South Africa. So he cannot say that he's leaving because he wants to bring about stability. It's a lie. He's leaving because he has failed. There is corruption. He tried to pull a fast one on the council with a Kratos deal. It failed also, fell flat on its face, an unsolicited bid. He's now responsible for 10 billion. And cumulatively, the amounts that have been stated by the Auditor General go up to 30 billion. 30 billion. Think about that.
Well, Solim Simanga says, I'm sure you were listening to the response, that part of the issues or the monies included in the irregular expenditure were linked to basically improper arrangements or deals that were made by the city of Tshwane that predate the DA administration, i.e. when the ANC ran the show.
Okay, let me return that with a question. Mm-hmm. So the Auditor General of South Africa audits the statements of the city beyond the financial year in question. Is that what he's saying? He's saying that now the Auditor General of South Africa, when they audit a financial year, they audit beyond that particular financial year, going back to 5, 6, 7 years in time. Is that even possible?
No, what he was saying was, what he was basically saying, excuse me, I don't mean to cut you off, what he was saying basically is that there were contracts and I'm paraphrasing here, that were basically terminated when the DA-led coalition took over, that were improper from a time predating their arrival, and that is why then money spent on fighting some of those battles have now fallen in the category of irregular expenditure. And as you were saying, am I right to say, you don't think that argument stands?
That argument does not hold water. Irregular expenditure definitely means you're spending money outside of what you said you're going to spend money on. When the financial year begins and a term of office starts, the leadership collective crafts what we call an IDP. An IDP, an integrated development plan, which will last for 5 years. That IDP is revised mid-term to ensure that it accommodates needs that may arise from time to time. But there is a yearly budgeting process which allows for the adjustment of what could have been a priority in the IDP at the beginning or the start of a term. If you are going to say to us that you have incurred irregular expenditure because of a political party which held the reins prior to your taking over, it doesn't make sense within the budgetary cycles and a fiscal prudence that is supposed to be exercised by leadership or by a city. It's clutching at straws. You are creating a mirage in the middle of a desert with people who are thirsty for water, and there's no water to be offered. Just tell the truth. You have failed to govern. There is nothing that says you were correcting the mistakes of a party which governed very well, by the way, which had turned the city into a construction site when we were in charge. You cannot say that now. The Auditor General of South Africa picked out these things, and the leadership must take accountability for them. They must not push them onto us as the African National Congress.
Interesting that you say the ANC governed Tshwane well, but the electorate disagreed, which is why you failed to win that city through an outright majority.
I disagree.
Well, if you had governed well, why didn't the people give you an outright majority?
We were punished for national issues. Mm-hmm. There were national issues at the time the local government elections of 2016.
So twice,
there were national issues.
Twice you were victims of national issues. If you were so great, why weren't the people who were living in a perfectly run ANC metro, why didn't they see through the national issues to precisely vote for excellent leadership? Is that not an insult to their intelligence to say they were unable to completely separate the national from the local?
Electoral patterns are very stubborn, Tembege. Electoral patterns are very stubborn. To turn the tide against an electorate that is cosmopolitan in nature. We are not a rural city. We are a cosmopolitan city. The bulk of the voters did not go to the polls. They did not go to the polls because many of them, having conceptualized what are the issues that affect South Africans in general, have thought that perhaps the African National Congress as a political party has not stepped up to the plate to fix the problems. And that is a national issue. It is not an issue around the city of Tshwane. We have on record we have a stellar performance for the time we were in charge of the city. And we have literally turned the city into a construction site, into an employment zone. And we are being punished by voters by not going to the polls and not necessarily voting against us. You can check the trends. We are not being voted against. The people are not going to the polls.
So, but there is an irony, is there not? I'm glad you mentioned the national picture. There is an irony when a group from the ANC in any part of the country calls out a mayor who presided over irregular expenditure, poor delivery of basic services, because in any province in this country, anyone could pick out an ANC-run area where the mayor has in fact not resigned, even under those circumstances. So is there something here, in this case, for your own mayors who are dealing with situations similar to what Randall Williams, you say, was presiding over? Should they follow his example and quit?
Well, I cannot speak for the African National Congress at the national level or even at the provincial level in relation to the picture that you are painting now. I can only speak for the African National Congress where I have got jurisdiction to speak, and this is over the city of Tshwane or the greater Tshwane region of the African National Congress. The mandate that we have and that we have executed with finesse, if I might add, has been that when we were in charge of the city, We outdid ourselves. And given the chance, we will continue with that legacy. We had a vision that we packaged called Vision 2055. It was intended to turn the city of Tshwane into a world-class city that competes with the best of the best in the world. We are the third biggest municipality by landmass in the whole world. And we have set ourselves as the African National Congress standards that are equivalent to the best in the world. New York City, Hong Kong City, all these cities that you may speak about, London. We have set ourselves those standards at the African National Congress. We performed towards achieving Vision 2055, and we have it on record that we were well on our way to transforming the city to a world-class city of excellence.
Well, it might be a long way off when you look at the experiences of people such as areas like Hammanskraal, for instance, where even clean drinking water has become a problem, and they say that's gone on for years. But anyway, we're out of time. Let me ask you about the next 14 days, which is when a new mayor has to be elected in council. Who will you field as your candidate?
That discussion is a discussion that is yet to be held in the leadership sittings of our structures. We will have that discussion, and once a decision has been taken, you will be the first to know.
But you were talking a few weeks ago already about a motion of no confidence against Randall Williams. Did you not have a candidate in mind, or are you just not sure of how the numbers will stack up in discussions with the other parties who you will now have to convince to vote with you, should you put a person forward?
Tamagila, in a circumstance that we find ourselves in, where you have a coalition arrangement, you have to consider the fact that you can't have a monologue. You cannot have a soliloquy, if I may use the term. You must have a full-on engagement with other parties of interest to make sure that we build a government that works. It has been proven that the current coalition has failed. We don't want to be rushing through the process to produce another coalition that will fail. We will support what will work. We will discuss with other parties of common interest and common thoughts, and we will see whether we can reach common ground in who becomes the executive mayor and his team moving forward.
Will the ANC in Tshwane want to go as far as what's happened in Johannesburg, where you give the mayor's seat to one of the smaller parties, as has happened with Al Jamaa?
I don't want to act like a sangoma and say this is what's going to happen.
Do you think
that can only be
acceptable?
A product of that's going to be a product of thorough discussions by the leadership collectives of the various parties involved.
Bafuze Yabo from the ANC in Tshwane. Good to speak to you, sir.